Hi everyone, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about why you need to feed your cats extra food so they don't starve to death. Just kidding. This is where I talk about books, and today I'm doing a review on a book I just recently finished called Vermilion by Molly Tanzer. If you watch my videos, when I pulled this out of my TBR jar in February, I was excited because this is a book that I anticipated would be 5 stars for me. But I also thought that Vermilion was a name for the color green, and it's not. It's for red, which seems so obvious to me now that I've made that mistake. So Vermilion is a shade of red, a very beautiful shade of red, on this fucking gorgeous cover. Look at this cover. Anyways, okay, so Vermilion is the story of Lou Merriweather. She is a psychopomp, which is sort of like an exorcist, but I believe it focuses more on the Chinese culture and how they deal with their like culture's undead and things like that. So she's a Chinese exorcist, and this is set in the 1800s, I believe, in San Francisco, and it's not quite like our San Francisco. There are like talking bears. They talk about talking sea lions down by the bay. They talk about jackalopes, which is so fucking cool. Yeah, Lou is really a woman after my heart. She's kind of a hard ass, but like also kind of soft and chewy in the middle. She's dealing with the recent death of her father. She's dealing with a strained relationship with her mother. She is dealing with being the owner and only psychopomp for her father's agency that she's taken over after his death. And she's maybe not having a tough time, but she's dealing with some shit. And she's so likable. I think that I could read 20 other stories about Lou in different situations and be totally happy with that. But in this book, she tries to make up with her mom, and her mom tells her about some disappearances happening in Chinatown among the young men who live there. And in Chinatown, young men are very important to the people of Chinatown. So it's a big deal when a lot of them start going missing. And she finds out that a lot of them have left for work up in Cheyenne, which is in Wyoming. So this is like when the West was particularly wild, you know, back in the 1800s. And there had been a lot of work on the rails. So these Chinese men, they're going to work on what they think is a rail, you know, building a rail track, building rail tracks up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and they aren't coming home. They aren't writing. Their parents and their siblings and their wives just don't hear anything from them. So that's a big problem. And one of the mothers of one of the missing men gets this shipment sent back to her, and Lou goes over to inspect it because they haven't opened it yet. And it's basically a crate of these, like, it's kind of like snake oil, you know, it's called the elixir of life, and it says that it can cure anything, you know? So in that crate, like underneath these stacks of this elixir, is the body of a young man, and he's dead, but he's not decomposed. So everyone's like, that's not right. He should be decomposing, you know, traveling from Wyoming to California. That's a long trip. So as she is inspecting him, he comes back to life. So he's like a zombie vampire. Like, he's undead, he's kind of rambly. He's not exactly a vampire, but they call him, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, because I probably am, but they call him Gung Si, and that's like a soul vampire, so he's trying to eat their soul, which is so creepy. And she manages to exorcise him and stuff, but now she has to go see what the fuck is going on. So she tracks these elixirs down to a sanatorium near Cheyenne, and she travels up there, and she meets, when she gets to the rail station up there, she is confronted by a man named Shy, who works for the sanatorium. And he's like, oh, I was supposed to bring workers back to the sanatorium from here. And she pretends, okay, the thing about Lou is that she's kind of androgynous. She doesn't, I don't think, wish to be a man, but she lets other people think whatever the fuck they want because she doesn't care. So I think it's a lot easier for her to get around if people do think she's a man, because she's Chinese, first of all, and she's a woman. So like, people are so prejudiced and so sexist in this time, in this book. So it's just easier for her to let people think that she's a man. So Shy thinks that she's Mr. Merriweather, and she goes along with it. She doesn't correct him, and they're traveling. She starts to think that Shy's kind of likable, and hasn't told him exactly why she needs to go to the sanatorium. She tells him that she's sick, which is why she needs to go. And he's like, okay, you don't seem sick, but all right. And eventually they get into a fight. She's shot in the shoulder, and, well, I'm sorry, her and Shy don't get into a fight. They get into a fight with some outlaws. And, sorry, I need to take a sip of my coffee. And she gets shot in the shoulder, and he eventually finds out that she's a woman. But he says he kind of thought so. He kind of thought that she was a woman. So that's no big deal. And they start to develop a friendship, and maybe even kind of like each other. Eventually they get to the last, like, town, trading post, I guess, before the sanatorium. And while they're there, Shy's beginning to get really apprehensive about bringing Lou up to the sanatorium. He thinks that she's there to, not because she's sick, but he thinks that she's there to steal the potion for the elixir. And she's not, but she lets him believe that again because she doesn't want him to know why, if he's an employee of the sanatorium. So he takes her aside, and because he likes her so much, he says he doesn't want her to go because he thinks that she'll be in danger. And she's like, well, why would I be in danger if there's nothing dangerous there? So he tells her this. Okay, at this point, up to this point, I was like, this book is so fun and exciting. But then there's this weird twist, kind of, and it was delivered kind of strange because he's like, let me tell you a story. And of course he starts out with like, guess how old I am? And she's like, I don't know, like 20 something? And he's like, no, I'm really 7,000 years old. Just kidding, he's not 7,000, he's like 400 or something like that, but he's 400 fucking years old. So what the fuck? It seems like that seemed to me kind of like a cheap twist, I guess, especially when you're dealing with like an elixir of life kind of situation, but I don't know, maybe that's to be expected. So he tells her the story about how he's 400 years old, and back when he was a child, before he was 400 years old, he lived in Spain, and eventually he was sold as a slave to an alchemist, and the alchemist wanted him because he was a virgin, he was a child, and while he was in the service of this alchemist, he met another man who was a vampire named Lazarus, and him and Lazarus kind of eventually fall in love, and then one day they overhear the alchemist talking about how he wants to kill Shy, or he has to kill Shy for some alchemy thing that he's doing. So Lazarus and Shy decide to kill the alchemist and run away together. And so over the years they've just had to, you know, they have to move every now and then because neither of them are aging, and Shy isn't aging because he's been drinking this elixir of life, which is something that the alchemist had brewed up. So he has a large stock of it, which has kept him from aging for the most part. He has gotten a little older looking over the years, but he still looks like he's in his mid-20s. So Lazarus and Shy have had to travel, they have to move around a lot. So they, you know, 400 years later, they're really looking forward to trying to settle down somewhere. So they come up with this idea for the sanatorium, and they have been letting people have very diluted bits of this elixir of life to pull them in. And then Lazarus has been acting as a doctor there, Dr. Panacea. Dr. Panacea. I think that's what I was calling him in my head. And he's been eating some of the sicker patients who just aren't going to get better. And then it looks like they just died, like they just didn't get better. And that's okay, the sanatorium, sometimes people die. That's when Lou's like, so in her head, she's like, so this vampire is also, he must be eating these Chinese men who go up there for work. She still doesn't tell Shy the real reason why she wants to go there. She lets him think that it's for the formula. And she's like, well, I'm still gonna go there. He doesn't want her to. He leaves without her, leaving her kind of stranded. But she ends up making it up there anyways. And she is still posing as a sick man. She doesn't see Shy while she's there, which is very strange. But during her first dinner there, the doctor, Dr. Panacea, Dr. P, we'll call him Dr. P. That's what they call him for part of the book. So Dr. P is there with his wife, and she's like, so how come Shy didn't say anything about his lover having a wife? That's weird, right? But then she sees Dr. P's wife, and it looks like Shy with breasts. And she's like, what the fuck is going on here? You guys, that's not the weirdest thing that happened in this book, so just hold on a second, okay? It's very strange. So she's kind of rooting around for clues as to where these Chinamen could have gone, because she doesn't see them at the sanatorium. She asks around, kind of sneaky, and you know, people say, oh, they've seen some Chinese workers, but not like all the time. And it's like sometimes they'll see them around the sanatorium compound, but they don't know where they go. They don't see them that often, and they don't ask because they're just Chinamen, and who gives a fuck, really, is what is implied, because that's how they feel. Who gives a shit? So while she's there, she finds out that one of her old friends, Beau, is at the sanatorium. He's a monster hunter, which is different than a psychopomp. So she's like, oh, he's here because he must have heard about the vampire, right? But it turns out he has the consumption, which is tuberculosis, and that's why he's actually there to get better. And she's like, nothing about this has thrown you off or made you feel weird. And he's like, no, I think that the Dr. P and the fitness trainer, Miss Foxglove, and everyone, all the employees seem great. And she asks about Shy, and he's like, oh, that must be Dr. P, Mrs. Panacea's wife or brother, but I don't see him really. He's always off doing things for Dr. P. Man, the shit's whack. So she's rooting around. Eventually she finds out that Dr. P knows that she's not a man, that she's a woman, which is like, if he's a vampire, like, you can probably tell things, you know. So her and one of the people that Beau has befriended while he's there, a girl named Coriander, she's like maybe 16 or 17. She's there because she's gay and her parents are trying to cure her of her gayness by sending her to a sanatorium, which is so fucked up. So Coriander is so sweet and just joyful all the time despite this wacky situation she's been put in, and she helps Lou break into Dr. P's office. And they find this trapdoor. They follow this trapdoor down like a tunnel out to the other, like underneath and out to the other side of the mountain. They end up finding 2 bodies hung over the side of the mountain, and Lou pulls them up and she's like, why are these bodies so light? This is strange. And she pulls them up and realizes neither of them have fucking legs. She's like, that's weird. I don't know. She exercises them, you know, to help them go peacefully to the other side. They go inside and have dinner. And while they're having dinner, Lou's like, you know, they're talking about how, oh, they haven't had meat in so long. Usually it's just like vegetables. They only get meat once in a while. They've had meat like 2 days in a row, and that's nuts. And then Lou realizes that they're fucking eating people's legs. They're eating the missing legs. So she's like, well, is that it? Are they keeping the Chinamen to feed the sanatorium patients? That's weird, but okay. After a while, Dr. P, she's just getting increasingly frustrated with herself. She needs to find out how to go about confronting this vampire. He's probably strong because he's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So she's like regretting not bringing anybody with her, and she's nervous and she's kind of scared and she doesn't know what to do. She thinks she's gonna get herself killed. Finally, she gets the opportunity to kind of ambush Dr. P and Mrs. P while they're in a hot spring, and she takes Mrs. P hostage, kind of, except for that Dr. P is a fucking vampire and he knocks her unconscious before she can do anything about it. And she wakes up and she's like in part of Dr. P's office, and Shy is there. And she's like, okay, so you are a woman? You're pretending to be a woman? I don't understand. And okay, this gimmick was kind of weird. I thought this was strange. Dr. P reveals that Shy is intersex, and that's why the alchemist really wanted him when he was a child, was because he was a virgin and he was intersex. So I'm not really sure why that, I don't know. I don't understand that reveal. Like, it could have been just as weird. I mean, that's the thing, is like they're making it seem so weird, which is kind of mean. I don't know. Intersex people are not weird. So it would have been, I don't know. I don't know how else they could have done that reveal. Maybe just that Shy was dressing as a woman so that their relationship would have been more openly accepted. I don't know. But she's like trying to get Shy to help her here because she's like, I know that we had a little bit of a connection, but he's like totally an asshole, which is so strange. And he's all about Dr. P, and they're all like, oh, my darling, my dear this, and they're like torturing Lou to get them to tell her why she's here and what she's found out, and Shy like helps, and he's totally cold-blooded about it, and it's like the change in Shy was so drastic. And like, I can understand why, like, sometimes bad guys seem good at some point. But that's not what this seemed like to me. It seemed like Shy had no reason to be this way, you know? Like, there was no motive for him to all of a sudden be a piece of shit, except for maybe that his boyfriend is a vampire and he's trying to keep him alive, I guess. I don't know. But Dr. P treats Shy like shit. He's so condescending. He acts like Shy can't do anything right, like Shy doesn't know anything, like it's his fault that Lou ended up here. Eventually they dump Lou into like this cage in a tunnel where the missing Chinamen are. So she's like, well, at least I've found out what's going on with that, I guess. And they tell her that they've been building a replica of a Chinese dragon called a Tinglang, I think is how you'd pronounce it. And they're dragons that can fly without wings, and they fly with this bone that they have like on the back of their head. So Dr. P has found the real bone of a Tinglang. He had somebody steal it from the skeleton so that he could put it back in this replica to make it fly, because this is a way to bypass some of the rules up in Cheyenne for the rail, because there is no rail going up past Cheyenne to the sanatorium, and he needs more people to feast on. So he is going to build a dragon train, basically using the flying bone from a Chinese dragon in a replica of a Chinese dragon. So that's why he needed all these Chinese workers for it, so he could build an exact replica. And I'm not sure why he needed to imprison them to do that. Like, why he couldn't just have them work normal? I don't know. So then there's this final conflict where Dr. P is trying to he finally gets the flying bone while Lou is down there, and they're trying to put it on the dragon train, and they kind of get it to work. And so then there's this final conflict because her friend Bo, who had been staying at the sanitarium, he had friends waiting out, like camping out, hiding while he's been staying at the sanatorium, just in case anything goes wrong, I guess. So Bo and his monster fighting friends come in, and they're trying to battle Dr. P, but Dr. P is fucking nuts. Also, Shy is fucking nuts because he's like 400 years old and he's like sword fighting with Bo, and Bo's got the consumption, but he's like, he keeps drinking this elixir of life so that he can like not like cough himself to death as he's sword fighting. Lou gets a hold of her psychopomp tools, and she has these bullets laced with Vermilion, which kind of slows the undead down. It can like paralyze them, you know, if it's just like a regular old ghost. But she's unsure if this will work on Dr. P because he's ancient and he's a vampire and he's very strong. So she's able to shoot him a couple times. She's able to slow him down, and then Shy comes and like rescues Dr. P kind of and whisks him away to the dragon train, and they fly away. So that's it. And I guess I didn't know that that Vermilion's going to be a series. So I was like, what the fuck, you know, at the end of this, because it's just, they got away. And then they got away, the end. That kind of bothered me. But I guess there's going to be a second book coming out this year, I believe, from what I've read. So I'm very excited to read that. And despite the things that didn't really make sense or didn't gel, didn't seem very sensitive to me, and you know, I'm not part of the intersex community. I'm not, I don't know anybody who's intersex. I could be being too sensitive about this, so let me know if I am. I could be being stupid and too, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna say that this was a bad book because of that, but I think that maybe the representation was kind of weird. It was kind of strange that the author used this as like a reveal, like a twist, like, surprise, they are intersex, and made it seem like it was supposed to be kind of weird. So forgive me if I'm being dumb about that, but it just seemed kind of strange. But despite that, I thought that I loved the writing in this book. I thought that Lou was a great character. I really thought that all the characters were good. Even the villains in this were written so good. Her group of friends, Bo, his friends, Coriander, who she meets at the sanatorium, like, they were all so unique and fun, and I liked that. I really liked that. So this is my extremely long-winded review of Vermilion. Give this book a try if you have listened to this spoilery review and still want to read it, Or, you know what, maybe read this and look forward to Quicksilver, which is the next book in this series. Yeah, that's all I have for you today. Please don't ask for more. Just kidding. I will be back with another video soon. Thank you so much for watching. I liked Vermilion. I gave it 4 stars. Maybe you'll like it too. I don't know. But until next time, see you later, alligators.